Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into a really captivating perspective today, one that's rooted in a super powerful concept, semillas que rompen la piedra, or seeds that break the stone. This source material puts forward a fascinating thesis. It basically argues that indigenous resistance isn't just, some dusty chapter in a history book. Instead, it's an ongoing, global reality that is literally tied to the survival of our planet's biodiversity. It's a really compelling look at history, culture, and environmentalism through a very focused lens. I'm absolutely thrilled to unpack these arguments with you. So let's get right into it and look at how this narrative begins.
Okay, let's dive into this. Mucho antes de que los mapas dibujaran fronteras, la tierra ya tenía guardianes. Long before maps drew borders, the Earth already had guardians. Now, this evocative idea sets our macro-historical baseline, and it does so without taking political sides. It asks us to look way past the modern political map of the world, right? Past the empires, the nation-states, the modern lines we just drew on paper. Instead, the original peoples of the world are framed by the source as the legitimate stewards of the planet. We're looking objectively at a timeline that stretches back millennia, highlighting how thousands of totally distinct populations developed completely different languages, rich cosmologies, and lifestyles completely adapted to their specific environments, literally from the Amazon rainforest all the way to the Arctic tundra.
Section 1. La herida de la conquista, the primal wound. This marks our first major thematic shift. We're transitioning from that ancient harmony to a sudden, absolute global change in paradigm.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact historical clash we're analyzing. On one side, we see the defining characteristics of pre-colonial life: deep environmental harmony, incredibly diverse native languages, and complex cosmologies. Then, this is contrasted directly with the doctrine of conquest. This doctrine established a repeated historical pattern all across the globe. We're talking about the dispossession of ancestral lands, the systematic eradication of local languages, and, as the text argues, a false promise of progress used to justify cultural assimilation. We aren't just looking at a single isolated event here. This actually defines a systemic pattern of disruption that affected millions globally.
Section 2. Formas de resistencia cotidiana. The architecture of resistance. So this systemic disruption leads directly into the core of how populations actually respond to such sweeping changes. The text completely redefines the concept of historical resistance.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the architecture of this everyday resistance. We're so used to thinking of resistance solely in terms of, massive physical battles. Tupac Amaru II, Sitting Bull, things like that. But here, we're zooming into the intimate, micro level of daily life. We're talking about intimate acts acting as the true frontline of cultural preservation. Things like guarding a single ancestral seed to keep traditional agriculture alive, transmitting a language in secret, passing it from grandmother to grandchild when it was literally outlawed, weaving the colors of memory into a traditional loom, or simply singing a traditional song to a river when those practices were strictly forbidden. These quiet, persistent, everyday actions were the most powerful forms of defiance against total assimilation. Which leads to a really profound conclusion from our source material. Sustaining an entire worldview for over 5 centuries against immense pressure to assimilate isn't just a byproduct of geography, and it's not simple survival. It is an act of collective heroism. To protect a distinct way of understanding the universe for over 500 years against constant pressure, that's categorized here as an active, heroic achievement by generations of people. It fundamentally shifts the entire narrative from one of victimization to one of just incredible cultural resilience and agency. Section 3, Guardians of the Biodiversity, Guardians of the Future. Having established this long, long history of cultural resilience, we now zoom back out to the macro level to connect this history directly to our modern global climate reality. First, let's look at the demographic reality. Indigenous peoples today represent a remarkably small fraction of the total global population. They make up less than 6% of all people on Earth. The vast majority of the world's population, over 94%, falls outside of these communities. Now keep that really small demographic slice in your mind because the next data point completely changes the context of this reality. Let's move to and see how this builds. Check out this massive contrast. Despite making up less than 6% of the global population, indigenous peoples protect over 80% of the remaining biodiversity left on the planet. I mean, that is a staggering inversion. In a modern world facing a very real, severe climate crisis, this historical resistance we've been tracking, it's no longer just a fight for cultural memory. It is objectively the key to the ecological survival of the planet. The very practices of everyday resistance, guarding those seeds, respecting those rivers, have actually resulted in the preservation of the Earth's most vital ecosystems.
Section 4, Semillas para el futuro, the seed metaphor. This brings us to the final philosophical synthesis of our explainer. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly in this metaphor from the text. Intentaron enterrarlos durante siglos, pero olvidaron que eran semillas. They tried to bury them for centuries, but they forgot they were seeds. Let that sink in for a second. This imagery ties the entire thesis together so beautifully. The source emphasizes that we have to stop viewing indigenous peoples as museum relics. These are modern, living, highly adaptable communities. We're talking about youth studying in universities, using modern technology, all while carrying forward the knowledge that protects 80% of global biodiversity. The very act of being buried, the historical oppression we talked about earlier, didn't end the story. Because like a seed, being buried into the dark earth is exactly what's required to take root, to endure, and ultimately break through the stone to grow again. Resilience isn't just survival, it's latent, unstoppable growth. As we draw to a close, we are left with a fundamental, totally provocative question that challenges the modern industrial worldview. Do we belong to the Earth, or does the Earth belong to us? The dominant global doctrine often operates on the assumption that the Earth belongs to us, right? That it's there to be extracted from and conquered. But the enduring success of the indigenous worldview, which is literally proven by their ongoing protection of global biodiversity, is rooted in the exact opposite belief, that humans belong to the Earth. Listening to these voices is framed not just as historical justice, but as an absolute necessity for our shared tomorrow.
We conclude this explainer with a final, poignant dedication from the source text. Honor to the original peoples of the world. Their roots are the strength of the planet. It is just a powerful summary of everything we've unpacked today, drawing a direct line from ancient roots to the very survival of our modern world. I really hope this journey illuminates the deep connections between history, culture, and climate for you, and leaves you eager to learn more about the everyday resistance happening right now all across the globe. Because honestly, if these seeds could break through the stone of the last 500 years, imagine what they're going to grow into tomorrow. Thanks so much for learning with me today.